It is 7 o'clock, so I'll call the September 9th, it will be September 9th, it'll be September 18th meeting to order of the Whitley County Plan Commission. If everyone would please join me in honoring our country with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Travis Baker.
Here.
Chad Banks.
Here.
Dane Drew.
Here.
Brent Emerick.
Here.
Jack Green.
Here.
Thor Hodges.
Here.
Mark Johnson. Kim Kurtz-Seslar.
Here.
Joe Wolf.
Present.
John Woodmansee.
We'll move on then to the consideration and adoption of previous meeting minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as they were presented to you, please?
Mr. President, under administration of oath, it says M. Deckard. Is that supposed to be Ms. Deckard?
I would presume so, since I was the only Deckard here.
Yes, it would be.
Are we satisfied with that initial being there like that, or do we want an S in there, or do we want to correct it to E?
I can correct it to her first name if you're okay with that amendment.
Would that be your request, Brent?
Yes.
Are there any other additions or corrections to the minutes, please? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion, please.
I'll make a motion we accept.
With correction?
Yes, with correction.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll call for a vote, please.
Travis Baker.
Abstain.
Chad Banks.
Yes.
Dane Drew.
Aye.
Brent Emerick.
Yes.
Jack Green.
Yes.
Mark Johnson. Kim Kurtz-Seslar.
Yes.
Joe Wolf.
Aye.
Thor Hodges.
Yes. Now that we've got that out of the way, the next item on the agenda is the administration of an oath to the witnesses. Anybody that's here tonight that feels that we might have something to say, maybe if you don't feel right now like you have something to say, but there's just always that thought in the back of your head that you might get up and talk, we'll administer an oath to you right now, which just basically says that you promise what you're going to say is the truth. I'll come back to Ms. Elizabeth Deckard, and if you would, administer the oath for us.
If anybody plans to speak tonight, if you please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that any statements you make tonight before the commission will be the truth? If so, state I do. I do.
We'll skip on past old business as we have nothing on the agenda and move to new business. First item on the agenda under new business is 24W Subdivision 15, also to be known as Lee Acres Subdivision. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So going to summary of the staff report. This is a one-lot plat to be named Lee Acres, located on Anderson Road, about 2,200 feet west of Sheldon Road in Smith Township. You might remember from last month we saw another one-lot plat from the same parent tract on Sheldon Road. This is on the opposite corner of that parent tract. Zoned to AG agricultural, again, it's one lot plat. This does dedicate right-of-way for Anderson Road. It is intended for a new home site. This is the second platted lot from the 2018 parcel, so no rezoning is required. As I mentioned last month, same thing applies here. Additional lots may be split, but it would require rezoning because it's flanked by lake residential zoning, both north and south. That may be a natural fit if the owner wishes to do that in the future, and that's really up in the air. He's kind of gone back and forth on what his future plans are. So kind of heads up if that comes to us. You can see there in the table, the zoning requirements are met and the minimums are met. Going to the reference materials, highlighted there in blue is the subject parcel. Sheldon Road goes up through here, and Anderson Road cuts diagonally across and over. As I mentioned, the light green is Lake Residential, dark green is AG. You can see how this parcel is flanked by those zoning districts. This is the area of the plat and the proposed plat overlaid over the aerial for reference, and then the plat itself. You'll notice that there is this barn that's located right here. It is offsite of this plat. The owner is retaining that. So the setbacks are sufficient around this barn while still maintaining the minimum width here that's required of 50 feet. So it's a little odd, that angle there, but that's why those angles do what they do. So going on to the proposed conditions, pretty standard recommended conditions, 2 septic sites being required prior to issuance of any building permit, and then delegation of staff, secondary plat to staff. And I believe, did we get a note from Health Department on this? They actually have already done the septic site soil testing, so that part is met. I still recommend having this condition in here just to make sure that we will always have 2 in case they need to move 1 or something. So any questions for me?
Thank you, Nathan. This time I would ask if there is a representative of the request for this subdivision to come forward, please. And please keep in mind, anybody that comes forward tonight, as you come to the podium or once you arrive at the podium, please state your name and your address, and then the floor is yours, please.
Kyle Lee with my wife Maggee Lee, currently 11605 US 33 North Cherubuskin. I don't know everything we're supposed to say, but basically he kind of covered it all. We just intend to build a new home. It's going to be obviously 1 house on that plot. Probably be forever home for us, so don't plan on doing much other than building the custom home there. Intend to do really as little as possible to everything else, kind of try to leave it as much as it is the same. Try not to disturb neighbors too much with, cutting down a bunch of trees in that area. Kind of try to do what we want to do without disturbing everybody else as much as possible. I don't think I have anything else.
Any questions for Mr. Lee, please?
Do you plan on having a basement?
No, it's going to be slab.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now move to a public hearing on this request and open the floor up for anybody that would like to come forward to speak either on behalf or in opposition of this request. Now is your time to speak, please. Final call. I see no one moving forward, so we'll close the public hearing. I'll turn it back over to the commission for your decision, please.
We got a petition letter on this. Are those people here tonight? By chance, Kevin and Barbara?
No, they're not here. I know they're our neighbors. They're not here.
Nathan, can you pull that up on Beacon and show me where their property's at?
Yeah, I believe they're,
Straight to the east off Sheldon Road.
yeah.
What's the name?
Kevin and Barbara.
Kevin.
Bear with me a second while I bring that up.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Their house would be right in.
I just wanted to see if there's a
Right higher. Real close right there. Well,
That was the address.
it's not the last house right
3243 North Sheldon Road. Right on the corner.
This one?
North.
This one?
Yeah.
So 4243 North Sheldon Road is
Can you turn on the county tiles?
that property. Sure can.
That's it. The close nearest tile is gonna be up in that northwest Anderson, there, up off of Anderson Road.
Okay. I just wanted to see,
And
because it
then-
said that they had done work. I didn't know if it was anything to do with the county or not.
Not that I could find.
Any other questions with Beacon?
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry, is there a point you wanted to bring up with that?
No, I just wanted to see if there was any county tiles around there, because they had mentioned water pooling, and I didn't know if it was a county job or if it was something they'd done on their own.
Oh.
But it was a private tiles, and that was all I wanted to know.
Is there a motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we approve 24 West Subdivision 15 with proposed conditions.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion, please? Go roll call for a vote, please.
Travis Baker,
Aye.
Chad Banks,
Yes.
Dane Drew,
Aye.
Brent Emerick,
Yes.
Jack Green,
Yes.
Mark Johnson, Kim Kurtz-Seslar,
Aye.
Joe Wolf,
Aye.
and Thor Hodges.
Yes.
And it passes. Congratulations on that. We'll move forward then to the next item on the agenda. Under new business, request to vacate a partial lot 24W vacate VAC-2. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is a partial plat vacation of Lot 2 of the Amos Yoder Subdivision located, it's actually got two frontages, one on 350 South and one on 500 West. The portion that's being vacated is on 500 West, about 700 feet north of the Whitley Road intersection. It tees. You know how Whitley Road kind of snakes through. In Cleveland Township, zoned AG agricultural. The Amos Yoder subdivision was a 2-lot subdivision approved in 2018. Mr. Yoder since sold it to the Fosnaughs, who currently own it. What is now being proposed is to vacate 2.84 acres off of that lot 2 in order to sell to an adjacent property owner who would then combine it with the existing property they already have. This could have been done in a couple different ways for your information. The subdivision code does allow for splits to adjacent property owners without going through a subdivision planning process if it does not create a new buildable lot. Being 2.84 acres, this would be a quote-unquote buildable lot. Option 2 would be to plat the neighbor's property and replat it with this 2.84 acres, so we have more platted property. Didn't really want to do that for various reasons. So option 3 is the one that's coming forward tonight, which is to vacate out of the plat this portion of lot 2 and combine it then with the unplatted property. You can see there in the tables the relevant figures. So going to the reference aerials, highlighted in blue. In purple, there in the center, is the entirety of the 2-lot Amos Yoder subdivision. Lot 1 had the Yoder's house and agricultural outbuildings, and the Yoders had a woodworking pallet factory, I believe, on Lot 2. They pursued the subdivision in 2018 to separate the business from the residents, essentially. The Fosnaughs, I believe, are continuing forward with that, and the business, I believe, we may need to look a little bit more into. That's not really relevant to this vacation request, though, other than just general reference as to the purpose of why it was split. This is the Amos Yoder subdivision as recorded and as platted. You'll note that there were rights of way dedicated along both 300 south and 500 west. So this is the survey that was submitted that would be the area being vacated. Again, the neighbor that will be combined is that property there in the center that has the buildings on it. 2.84 acres, goes back to that north-south line and runs down to an open ditch. So it's a fairly convenient place to break the property. Survey number 2 is the combined survey showing the intent to combine, which creates an overall parcel of 6.55. That dedicated right-of-way along 500 west, it's my recommendation that that still remain dedicated and not be vacated as dedicated right-of-way. Just kind of keeps things consistent. So that's what this would, if this vacation is approved and that combined goes forward, that's what it would look like. Vacation criteria, when we do a subdivision plat, basically the criteria are, does it meet all of the different codes in place? When we do a plat vacation, these are some additional criteria that we have to review. Conditions in the platted area have changed so as to defeat the original purpose of the plat. Again, Mr. Yoder's intent with this was to split business from residents. That is still is what happens with the remainder of Lot 2 and Lot 1. The business for the Fosnaugh business building is still separate from the residential building. This wasn't really crucial to that overall intent. It's in the public interest to vacate all or part of the plat. You can give some thought to that. And the value of the part of the land still in the plat will not be diminished by the vacation. The petitioner owns the entire plat, so that's basically a moot point. Finally, staff's recommended conditions on this, as I mentioned, the vacated acreage be combined with the adjacent parcel in order to avoid having an unplatted new buildable lot, and then that right-of-way that was dedicated still remain dedicated right-of-way. So, any questions for me?
Hearing nothing, I will ask at this time, is there a representative of this request here to come forward and talk about your request or project, please?
I'm Brian Fosnaugh, 4757 West, 300 South, Columbia City. Just looking to kind of square up the property. The neighbor was interested because that little 50-foot strip is really inconvenient to try to farm down through there, and it's just a hassle. And it would be more usable to him to have a bigger square instead of a little sliver we gotta fight through, and I don't have no use for the right of way really, but it's whatever, because I don't want a house back there. Other than that, just looking to try and square up the property and make things easier.
Any questions for Mr. Fosnaugh, please? Thank you, sir. I haven't done a vacate in a while that I recall. We still have a public hearing for those, don't we?
Yes, so official public hearing, please.
Yep. So we'll open the public hearing now, and I would ask anybody that would like to speak on behalf or in opposition to this to please come forward and express yourself. Last call. We will close the public hearing, turn it back to the commission for their favor, please.
I move to approve 24 West Vacation 2 with recommendations of staff.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion, please? Hearing none, we'll go to the vote, or go to the roll call for vote, please.
Joe Wolf. Aye. Ken Kurtz-Seslar.
Aye.
Mark Johnson. Jack Green.
Yes.
Brent Emerick.
Yes.
Dane Drew.
Aye.
Chad Bank.
Aye.
Travis Baker.
Aye.
And Thor Hodges.
Yes. Very good. That will conclude any new business. We will move forward to other business and have discussion on the shooting range. From the staff, we'll start with staff report or staff information first, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. So, what I handed out to you, Brent handed out ahead of the meeting are a black line version of the code draft and a red line version showing the changes staff has made since last month's meeting. Received a couple comments from Plan Commission members, both at the meeting and one or two afterwards. Had one or two members of the public call with comments, and then legal counsel also weighed in with a couple minor changes. Commissioner Banks has also met with me as well. Didn't have a chance to have the full committee meet. Basically, time got away from me, so didn't have that. So would like to have, as a full commission, an in-depth discussion tonight on this and go through why the changes and then where we're going from here. But then figure out whether you feel comfortable proceeding with a public hearing at the next meeting, or if we take a little bit more time to go on with more changes. So first thing though, let's see here. On the farm restaurant code amendment discussion, Mr. Emerick mentioned at the last meeting, and I heard from others as well, the farm restaurant, while it's a good concept that we really should pursue because we want to be proactive in case we get additional requests in the future, it really is part of a bigger discussion about agritourism, agribusiness, event centers, other types of uses that are either truly completely related to agriculture or much more arm's length, much bigger ball of wax than really just farm restaurants. So I really recommend that we postpone that, not for very long, but not try and tackle it with the shooting range discussion. So if you're okay with that, that's how we'll handle this, and we'll pick it up in either November or December when you guys feel comfortable doing so. I will say too, it is important to tackle agritourism because it is recommended to promote agritourism in the comprehensive plan. So that's another point for us to follow in the comp plan. So going on to the shooting range component specifically, I'll just rehash. The goal is to provide minimum necessary regulations to establish safe shooting ranges, indoor and outdoor, and to permit hunting and private shooting. I think that's still our overall goal. The objectives haven't changed from last month. Going to the specific definitions. Indoor ranges, I don't think anybody had any comment about the definition for indoor range. Everybody felt pretty comfortable, I guess, with that. So no change to that. Last time on the outdoor ranges, I had given you a couple options to pick from a couple of model codes that we had looked at. And the second one felt too bulky. The first one needed some work. So you can see there in the red line how some of that was melded together. So the outcome is the definition being a facility or the use of land for the purpose of providing a place for the discharge of various types of firearms outdoors. And this is specific to firearms. Some places also regulate archery at the same time, and nobody seems to want to do that, and I think that's something else anyway. Nobody really seems to have issues with archery. Importantly, based upon some of the discussion, and Mr. Woodmansee had mentioned like 4-H shooting program that they've got, we really wanted to make sure that those three things there listed are excluded out of regulations. So the way this is written, the definition for outdoor shooting range would not include the following, which are permitted as incidental uses. Incidental meaning that they are incidental to some greater use, be it agriculture or a residence or something else. So it would be game and general hunting. And the reason for that slash is not all hunting is for game. So let's say you're out shooting rats or something, that's, to most people, rats aren't game. So that's what general hunting is. You can laugh. It was sort of funny. Point two, I think this is the one that perhaps you've got a lot of thoughts on, is we kind of worked back and forth on this one a little bit here, but is the unorganized discharging of firearms in private property for personal benefit. And that would be your protection for your backyard shooting areas. Have some friends over and you have a target set up and you do shooting. That's definitely for personal benefit. It's for your own enjoyment. You're getting personal gain from it. Even if your friends are chipping in to buy ammunition or something like that, everyone's just gaining. There's no monetary gain, there's no education component, it's just having fun, whatever that personal benefit would be. Unorganized means it's not necessarily every weekend or at scheduled times or anything like that. And then discharging of firearms is kind of self-explanatory in private property as opposed to public property or commercial. Would commercial property be different than private property, Liz?
No, commercial property is still private because it's privately owned. It's not owned by the government.
Okay.
But it, like, in different laws, you hear it referred to as like a place of public resort, a place the public uses. Or like Kroger is private property, it's owned by a private company, but the public frequents it. It's a place where the public is.
And then the third thing there is temporary events at sites approved by the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, DNR. That is written lining up with what the 4-H programs do. They tend to use established ranges, Fish and Game Club in Busco, or another one if that's not available. DNR actually has to sign off on wherever they use it, though. It was brought to my attention that the Boy Scouts, and maybe Girl Scouts, I'm not sure, also do have a shooting range, or a shooting program, and that may be different than 4-H, so that's something that I wasn't aware of until yesterday that I'll need to look into as well. So that was written specific to meeting what 4-H does. The Scouts may be a little different, so that may need to be tweaked. I'll pause for your guys' initial reactions on that language.
We don't have a Boy Scout camp anymore in the county, so I don't think we have a Girl Scout camp anymore in the county. Boy Scout camps, 10, 20 years removed.
Do we have any like troops that would be shooting in a backyard or something that would be?
I don't know, because
Okay.
I knew the ranger that used to be out at the old Boy Scout camp, and they had their own range on the camp itself. But since that's gone by, I don't know.
You were going to say, Liz?
I was just saying, I think there's troops that do shooting, but if in number 3, Nathan, would that cover Camp Whitley?
No, Camp Whitley would probably fall under just the general outdoor ranges.
Okay.
As written, yes. Other thoughts from the members? Okay. Like I said, this is not a public hearing tonight. This isn't the last time you'll see this, so we'll have more chance for you guys to digest and have comments. So,
Well, I've got comments I was gonna give you, but I was gonna wait until you got all, I was just out of respect, I was gonna wait till you got over through it, but if you want them now, I can do that.
if you want to have comments across all of it, wait until the end. If it's specific to the definitions, go ahead right now.
Well, the only thing I would say specific to definitions is that this document really lacks any sort of definition. I mean, there should probably be a section just of definitions on terms and words that are used in this document itself. I think if you don't have that, it might be misunderstood or not appropriately applied. So I would suggest that we have a list of definitions for anything that might be possibly interpreted. You don't need to define everything on here, but I think there's certain parts of it that we should have a list of definitions for.
What is a berm in this context? What's backstop, firing line, et cetera,
Anything that could be, yes, anything that's pertinent to what we're putting in this that could be looked upon from different views. It needs definitely to be defined on what the expectation is. And that definition needs to be part of this document.
We can do that. Okay. Going on then from definitions, locations, this would be where the shooting ranges, indoor and outdoor, permitted or special exceptions. Didn't have much feedback on these. I assume no feedback means that the proposal is okay, at least at this point. So, so I'll move on then. Going on to standards, as you'll note, and as you may remember, there was a question as to whether standards should be in the county's general code or in the zoning code. Couldn't find anywhere else in Indiana, not to say they don't exist, but we couldn't find them, that shooting ranges were regulated in the zoning code other than parking. They were typically in general codes. Legal counsel kind of weighed out the rationale between general code versus zoning code. If it's in the zoning code, it's a zoning issue, and we enforce it as a civil matter through zoning code enforcement if we have issues, as special exceptions and so on. As opposed to if it's in the general code, the police are interested with enforcement of the general code typically. I'm sure there's ways you can have provisions for other things. So that's going to be something for the commissioners, I think, to actually be the final call on. But right now, I'm going to pursue this as if this is in the zoning code. So, but that may change depending on the final call. Indoor ranges, no change to those standards. Impenetrable walls, ceilings, baffles, etc., noise insulation are all required. Any additional thoughts on the indoor range standards? Okay. Outdoor range, berm or backstop is required. That's not changed from the last time. What has been changed somewhat, beefed up a little bit, or more specifically, is the reference to the NRA's Guide to Planning and Construction, the range source book. The owner must still maintain the berm and backstop in good condition. That hasn't changed either. Let's see. One thing that was added is that existing topography may be considered as an alternative to constructed berms or backstops if they still meet the requirements of the range source book. The example of that would be, let's say we have an abandoned gravel pit that has, say, 40-foot high walls, cliffs, whatever. So that may equate to a berm or backstop, depending on its material. So it may have to be soil placed on it or something, but no need to construct a berm in addition to that gravel pit wall. So giving some flexibility dependent on the site.
Nathan, how often do those recommendations from the NRA change?
I would have to look. The current range source book, I think, is several years old, but I don't remember. Thor, are you familiar with how old it is? How current it is? Let's see. Going on then, baffles, I don't have it on the slide, but baffles would be required, shall be required for newly submitted, specifically stating the intent, noise mitigation, and or straight projectile capture. Design shall meet the recommendations of the range source book and be reviewed as part of the special exception.
If I could
Go
jump
ahead.
in, I wanted to before you went on to baffling.
Oh, sorry.
In reading this, I still would offer that when it says the berm or backstop shall be constructed of, I think it needs to be further defined as far as what we expect as a berm or a backstop on how many sides. I don't think that a one-sided range is safe. It certainly isn't safe for the property that has brought this all forward, that we're trying to put something into place now. And my opinion would be that needs to be a three-sided berm or backstop. And it needs to be clearly defined as such, so this can't be interpreted as long as we're shooting into that backstop, we can only have one, we only required to have a one-sided backstop. I don't think that that's safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's great for catching bullets when that's where you shoot them, but there's too many times that bullets don't go where you shoot them, and that's the reason you need the berms on the sides. So I would offer that should be included in that definition.
Okay. I'll pause a little longer for other comments.
That's not something that's specified in the NRA source book?
That's something that I'd have to research.
Okay. I mean, are we being redundant?
I don't think so, because it talks about materials and height and thickness. It doesn't ever talk about how many sides.
Yeah.
So I agree with Thor.
Yeah, I agree with Thor too. I'd rather fill in all the gray areas so we don't have any problem in the future.
I agree.
Okay. Noted. I read the part about baffles. Did you guys have comments about baffles? Again, and my apologies, baffles aren't on the slide here. And baffles would be, I think, a defined term, because baffle, as applied to a shooting range, is different than other contexts. Okay, hearing no immediate comments on that. Going on, dangerous projectiles, this isn't a change, would not leave the property. As a zoning matter, we're trying to regulate for, as Thor mentioned, safety. Now, if there's one errant bullet, that's not really a zoning matter necessarily. That's a more civil or potentially criminal matter. But if it is a continuous thing, continual operation, that's part of the use, that is a zoning matter. So this is, I suggest that this be in here so that we have a mechanism to say, hey, you're not maintaining this in a way that is safe because projectiles are going off your property, you're not keeping them on site. That's grounds for rescission of your special exception. So.
And I guess I would also offer then would be an appropriate point to bring it up that not only should we add probably a definition section to this, but there should probably be a section that talks about violations, who's in charge of monitoring violations, investigating violations, and what the penalties are for violations, and do those penalties for a violation increase or get more severe if they continue to operate or do things against the rules or with those same violations. And I think all of that should be part of this document, I would suggest.
Okay, we'll look into how best to handle that.
Would that be a function of where this ends up as part of the general code or zoning code?
That would be one of the things, yes. So if it's in the general code, there definitely would be a very specific violation enforcement provision section to this. If it's in the zoning code, there are two ways of doing it. You could have something specific to this over and above just the general provisions of chapter 14 or 15. And that's what I'll have to research is how the interaction can be done.
Does DNR have any oversight on in outdoor shooting ranges? They don't have any, so they couldn't be the enforcer. Okay.
They do have some oversight over hunting.
Yeah.
But yeah, not over uses. I believe we even found a reference that said location and siting of ranges are a local zoning matter. Okay, going on then to setbacks, and this part is specific to the overall boundaries of the range. So basically, the firing line to the berms and backstops and the width of it, so that area wouldn't include things like parking areas, accessory structures, whatever. It's the actual firing range itself. We had some discussion last time about setbacks from property lines, residential property lines, and what that would be. Previously, I had suggested 300 feet with the option taking away or going with the property line option and bumping that up to 500 feet. Now that is defined as a property containing a dwelling. So just to make sure that's clear. So if it's a field that has a dwelling on it at the other end, great. But if by chance that dwelling is on its own property, that field would not fall under this definition. So it would be agricultural, not residential. The other two pieces there, 300 feet and 50 feet, have not changed. 50 feet matches the IN district setbacks for those uses. The three ranges that we have in the county currently that we've been discussing, that 50 feet is met by, I believe, all of them, or two of them, and the third actually does not meet that setback. And it comes, one side it definitely does, the other two sides it doesn't, and the third side's questionable. So, so that's those changes to the setbacks. Now, this one, which is the downrange setback, you'll recall and you'll see there in the previous meeting, Lake County's code, which was what I was pulling from for this part, had a quote-unquote downrange provision. It was really bulky and wordy. What I did, based upon some of the discussions, is take that concept and say, create this. So basically, the firing line is to be 1,000 feet from any school, park, or residence that is located downrange, quote-unquote downrange. Downrange being defined as the area in between the parallel lines of the shooting range, plus areas 30 degree as a 30-degree arc on either side of that. Does that make sense? Basically, straight ahead of where you're shooting and then 30 degrees either side out for 1,000 feet, or the maximum effective distance for the ammunition being shot as determined by the manufacturer or the NRA, whichever is greater. So it's 1,000 feet minimum, or whatever that maximum effective range is for that ammunition. So that's not exactly what one of the comments was, which was just 1,000 feet from any residence all the way around. What I did was align it to the direction of shooting. My thinking on it is, if this is a matter of safety, which we're trying to hit, an accidental discharge would go errantly one way or another. Thor, you can kind of wave your arm when you were describing that. So that's what that thinking is. If somebody turns 180 degrees and shoots just out of the range, that's a malicious thing, and I don't know that we should be trying to regulate for that. You can definitely correct me if I'm wrong in that thinking, but that's my thinking. So that's where we're coming from. 30 degrees is kind of an arbitrary number. Is it 45 degrees? Is it 90, 60, whatever? But I took 30 just as a number. So, so thoughts on that concept? And I've got a couple aerials here to give you some ideas of what that distance looks like in a second. But thoughts on the concept before I go to the aerials? Okay. Then finally, the required additional details as part of special exceptions. No big changes there other than adding in that noise mitigation measures need to be one of those required details, whether it be baffling walls, landscaping, whatever noise mitigation, that needs to be part of that approval. And then I also included another reference back to the range source book to show that that's what the NRA guidelines is being referred to. So, so the aerials in play here, and this is Hyler Road. You can see the pink line here, pinkish fuchsia line, I guess, is 1,000 feet. So the firing line is approximately right here. And so then 1,000 feet out from that would take you to this line, and then a 30-degree arc basically takes you to here, and then over to here. So the nearest residence, I believe, would be, let me see here, I believe that white roofed building just inside that 1,000-foot circle is not a dwelling.
It's a pole barn.
It's a pole barn. The dwelling on that property is to the west of that, just outside that 1,000-foot mark. However, it could potentially be within that 30-degree and definitely within a 45-degree arc. So if you beefed it up to, say, 1,500 feet, then that dwelling definitely would be within 1,500 feet. Going to the range in question, again, they shoot north, or at least I am going to assume that if this would proceed forward, they would commit to shooting in one direction. So assuming that it's being shot north, that 1,000 feet would be going into those woods. And then you can see if it was greater distances. That said, point was made, that 1,000 feet isn't their property. The Hyler Road range is also not their property. So that's another consideration. Are we saying it's just structure, or are we going to say it's got to be on your property? So that's something for you to think through. What do we want to try and regulate? Kind of couple thoughts. If we're trying to keep everything on the shooting range's property, then definitely make that their property. If you're just trying to say this is really trying to provide a margin of safety for the errant projectiles, then maybe it doesn't matter quite so much whose property it is. We're trying to institute, again, a margin of safety. Or there might be something in between. So you guys can think that through. And then finally, the third range for reference is Fish and Game Club in Busco, and that 1,000 feet, they shoot to the southeast. Notably, they're the only ones with any agricultural structures in the immediate vicinity. To the south and southwest is Churubusco Commerce Park, which are not residential, they're commercial, so would not be subject to the proposed standards. But shooting southeast, you can see where that fuchsia line is, and they too are shooting into someone else's woods, basically. I'm not sure if that's a member of the club. It's in Allen County. I don't know what their membership is. But they're shooting towards somebody else's woods and then somebody else's field then south of that. Notably, if you kind of squint right under that fuchsia line, that 1,000-foot line, there is a structure. At first glance, it looks like a dwelling. It is not. It is their shed, I guess, for that pond that they have. The owner actually lives north of the road, so kind of at the top of the screen, so for reference. So again, that if we look at that 1,000-foot mark or whatever that distance is with a degree arc as quote-unquote downrange, all three of these examples would be going on to other people's property. Is that good? Is that bad? What level of comfort are we looking for? What level of safety are we looking for? I think I kind of covered that. I've covered all the changes. Trying to think of anything else I've got for you. Comments? Yes.
The only thing that I'll say is that the argument from the beginning is that effective berms and baffling will prevent the rounds from, even errant rounds, from leaving the range. So I'm not so sure that we need to be concerned about what's beyond that, what's in that 35 degree, because we're wanting to regulate these ranges to the point where a round can't get out. So I'm not sure that's even valid for the conversation.
Right.
I don't disagree with Chad. And if you go out to the Hyler range, it is essentially set up to where it would be very difficult, if not purposeful, to get around outside of it, just because of the baffling system, which is not only meant to catch bullets, but also to reduce the noise. And I think that we have a lot of people that's one of their biggest concerns. The safety factor is there too, but the enjoyment of their property and being able to be outside is a concern. So I would agree with what Chad says on it.
Okay. So the downrange concept is kind of overkill if we have a good set of on-site measures.
Yes.
Well, especially since 30 degrees seems to be somewhat arbitrary.
Yeah, it's very arbitrary. Okay. I'll ask too, the concept of a malicious someone turning 180 degrees, is that something we want to try to mitigate through these measures, or do we just keep to the accidental sort of discharge thing? Hyler Road, you turn south and you could easily shoot over the southern berm if you wanted to, for example.
Nope. It's a four-sided range.
That southern side's a lot shorter than the other three, though, as I recall.
I don't think so.
Okay.
There's an opening there, which you could shoot through that opening, but it's pretty much a four-sided range.
Right. Okay. So, okay, more generally, if it was three-sided, turning 180 degrees facing south, then do we want to try and address malicious activity, or just let that be a criminal instance?
I think that'd be a criminal thing for law enforcement.
Okay.
Or the owners to contact law enforcement.
Well, hopefully, I think you've made the point, focus on the on-site measures. To the degree that that prevents the malicious activity, great. We can't completely prevent someone from doing evil, I guess. So, okay.
The property owner has every right to expel someone too, and even if a crime isn't committed, then a person can be removed and not welcome back.
That's a good point. Okay. So, other comments about any of this?
Are these NRA guidelines available online? I'm just curious about where they're at right now.
The current book is available in print, so you would have to purchase it. It is not available online. I think previous editions were. So that would have to be upon the applicant to acquire that and then, again, show that they are compliant with those recommendations.
So what kind of height are we dealing with? I mean, how do we know if it's going to even reduce sound if we don't buy a book and read it? I mean, we're just taking them for their word.
Well, we would be taking the NRA for their word, yes.
No, I think he's talking about the people that own the range. We're taking them for their word that there's the correct height. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, not really. I'm just curious to say, what is the NRA saying? We're writing code based on what they're saying, and we have no idea what they're saying. Mm-hmm. Is it 12 inches? Is it 12 feet? Is it? I mean,
and I think that's part of what I kind of implied earlier, that we need a definition section in these provisions that define that stuff, and we could transfer that particular part of what the NRA holds as a standard into our definitions.
Okay.
And so it would stand on its own document.
Yeah, I'll say too, that kind of goes back to some of the discussion we had. How much do we want to put very explicitly into this code versus refer to an outside source, be it the NRA or somebody else? So that's going to be an ongoing question. How much do we explicitly put in here?
I think anything that we explicitly talk about needs to be defined in this document.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Brent, other comments?
I kind of agree. I say, one option would be to keep what you have as far as what the NRA recommends, but put a minimum in there, not to be below, whatever we feel is safe, because they could come out tomorrow with a new book and just be off the wall. I don't know if they do that, but
okay. And I think using the Hyler Road as a model, everybody seems to be comfortable with that. Might be where we start and just say we
feel like it's a safe range.
Yeah, this is our minimum, and then if the guidebook requires something higher, then use that. Okay. Other comments from anybody else?
I refrain from calling it a public hearing, but I know there are several people here that are here tonight that did get sworn in and did not speak on our previous two topics, and I would like to offer the floor to anyone who would have any input on this as we move forward. So please come forward.
I'm Jim Cormany, 3776 North 450 East Columbia City. These setbacks look way too short to me. 500 feet from a property line containing a dwelling, 50 feet from other property line. I own property on both sides of this. 50 foot's way too close, and 500 foot's way too close. What if we ever decided to build within, right on our property line? We just can't if we have this thing back here. And if you're thinking about, it sounds like you're even thinking about just keeping it a two-side thing, or are you going to go four sides?
Initially, I suggested it should be four-sided. I think that that's the safest. I backed off to three sides, but I don't think it should be anything less than three sides, Jim.
Yeah, I don't either, especially if you're going less than 1,000 foot from a property line containing a dwelling. I think it ought to be 1,000 foot from a property line containing a dwelling. And I don't know what it ought to be from my property line, but it ought to be more than 50 foot.
I think if the berms are there and the baffling system's there, the closer you are to it on your property line is actually going to be a little bit safer than if you were like mid-range from it anyway, because it would be almost impossible. But I understand what you're saying, because that doesn't change the noise, but it's still there for the safety. But have you ever been out to the Hyler Range?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to, get a hold of me and I'll take you out there sometime and we'll look at it. And I think you'd have a different perspective on maybe what
Safety.
we're talking about as far as distances. I don't think it's going to be a big concern if we put if we put the berms and the baffling system as a strong worded piece of this project.
How high are those berms out there?
I don't know. They got to be 15 feet, I think.
At least.
15, 18 feet, I think, Jim.
Or is it the baffling?
And the baffling's higher than that. The baffling, I think, starts at about,
That's 40, 50 feet.
it starts at like 12 foot and goes 40 or 50 feet above the berm.
As constructed, they were supposed to be 20-foot berms. I think they've weathered a little bit, so they might be like 16 to 18 in some places. So
That'd be a lot more than what he's got back there now. He's got about 10, probably.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know that I've been back there, but that's not safe.
It may not be quite 10. It's about the same height as one of these little porta potties back there. Might be a little higher than the porta potty. But, I mean, I'd like to see you go 1,000 foot to a property that has a dwelling on it. Really would. And when we talk about a three-sided berm, because of we don't think somebody's going to get wild and shoot behind them unless they're trying to shoot somebody. That when we're at shooting ranges, stuff happens. Probably all of you have been at ranges. Errant bullets happen. They have for me. So I think at minimum it's got to be four-sided, and it's got to be a lot higher. So I'd like to see you go back 1,000 foot from any property with a dwelling on it. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else, please?
Todd Linville, 4525 North 450 East. And I support what you're saying with the four-sided. I think it'd be better for baffling and stuff. We're talking about setbacks and that. I think something, I like the idea better of just keeping all the bullets in, because even though it's hard, just agricultural fields, like, this time of year, guys are trying to harvest, and they don't want to work around somebody else's schedule on the shooting and stuff. They have a right to be in their field doing their thing, or like before, talking about, cutting wood in their woods and stuff. So it's maybe more of my concern, I guess, or my thought is to make sure that all stays in there, like the four-sided, that kind of thing. And then the baffling for the noise, of course, too. And one other thing I heard or thought about is there are companies that do build these ranges for their business. We would work to consult with some of them for best practices. I was just doing a quick Google search and found some places that were doing it, and they showed some pictures what they did. Maybe that gives us other ideas, or what they would know, what they had seen problems with, maybe. It's just an idea. We'll look into that. Yeah, I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else, please? Sonia, I know you stood up and got sworn in. You don't have anything to say. All right. So, do you have anything else for us this evening?
So where I'm going to go with this, if it's okay, I'll make some additional edits, run it by the 3 members of the ad hoc committee, and if it's okay, we'll advertise this for public hearing for the October meeting. Or do you want to hold off on the public hearing for a little longer and do another one of these discussions next month?
I think I'd like to know where the county commissioners' heads are on this in terms of where it's ultimately going to end up.
I don't think we know, really. I'm not really sure. I can't speak for the whole group, and I'm not even sure where I'm lying at this moment. So I can't say. Sorry, Kim.
That's okay.
On just personal reference only, I would like to see us probably bring the new document back forward at our next meeting. We don't need to be in a rush. We can look at it in November for a public hearing.
That works.
What is the time frame where the 90-day clock ends?
For the specific range, that would be middle of October. I forget the exact date. So.
Which I think 2 points have been made that's the end of their season, and zoning could always extend it for them if they saw that as a smart thing to do.
I agree. I think it'd be good to have another discussion on this, because I think quite a few changes have been proposed. We want to see what those look like and be able to discuss those.
Okay. You're right. We are not under the gun in terms of timeline necessarily, so that sounds fair to me.
Does anyone on the commission have anything from the good of the cause, please? We're adjourned.